Good evening everyone and welcome to the No Water Walkthrough Challenge. It's bacon on camera. This does not happen often, trust me, so you're especially lucky. Especially with my post-apocalyptic haircut, which still has some of the blue/green from the Christmas charity, by the way. Thank you guys for that. Anyways, welcome to the challenge. I just want to get two things quickly out of the way before we jump in. So first of all, this whole thing will be happening thanks to the custom water level mod, which effectively allows you to customize how high or how low the level of the water should be, and so we'll be putting that to minus 10,000, thusly removing all the water in the map. It's not just going to be the glitch where the water doesn't detect. Secondly, I want to give two quick shoutouts where I believe they are due, and those are number one to Salvener, whose moist percent run is absolutely incredible, and even though it is a bit different than the challenge I'll be trying here, I believe it still deserves recognition. And second is a channel called Rickety, which I believe is doing the exact same challenge at this very moment. In fact, I believe he even got inspired to do the challenge based on one of my videos, so mad props to both of these mad lads, and let's just hop right into it. So, let us embark on this epic adventure and jump into survival. Alright, so the opening plays out about as you would expect. We get into the life pod, we get out of the life pod, bim, bam, bomb, tap, 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 and we are on planet 4546b, and of course, as already established, things are already dying. Now right off the bat, I figure out that getting food is probably a priority, so I catch a few fish and then go back to cook them in the life pod. And you know what, I'm feeling pretty good, like we might actually be able to do this. Well, definitely won't be needing any of those, that's for sure. I figured out that the first tool I should probably get is the scanner, so that I can scan other blueprints, and then in general just build a lot more stuff later down the line. So here we go. Dude, look at this world. Oh yeah, and make sure you get used to the tilting of the life pod, that's going to stay for a while. And just like that, we have the scanner. So far so good. Now, it is quickly becoming apparent to me that resource gathering is going to be much more difficult than I originally anticipated, because, well, number one, you're not able to swim, so reaching anything that's high up is out of the question. And number two, if you end up falling into a hole that you can't get out of, well, too bad, you have to reload the save, because you're not getting out any other way. I mean, unless you can, like, build yourself out. Oh yeah, and full damage is also a thing, apparently. Now I figured that the next thing I should probably build is a knife, and to get that, we're gonna need some of the creepvine clusters over there from the kelp forest. So let's embark on a journey. Okay, now how am I gonna reach these? They grow out kind of out of the way. Luckily I found this one small island that you could kind of jump off of to reach this nearby creepvine cluster, and so I was actually able to get them after one or two attempts. Okay, maybe it was more like 15 attempts. At one point I even tried standing on a bladderfish that would actually float me up, but that was only with limited success, and I was never actually able to get any clusters using this method. Now I finally had these, but suddenly I ran into an issue. Yep, that's my life pod over 400 meters underneath us. See, as we've already established in the previous video, when you're not next to your life pod, everything despawns, and because this thing apparently has physics applied to it, it will just start floating downwards. And this is a big problem. See, at the start of the game, you kind of need the life pod in order to be able to do, well, anything, because it has the fabricator in it. So, yeah, I rip this game world, and I have to restart everything over. Alright, here we are, 4546b again, lovely as ever. So I started thinking about the plan to hold the life pod in place. I figured maybe if I build something around it to stop it from falling down, that would be the way to go. So I figured, you know, you can use pipes to trap reapers, so why don't we try using some pipes? Unfortunately, I quickly realized you actually have to attach these to an air pump, and you can only deploy the air pump in water, so yeah, ripped that plan. I even tried just pushing the air pump underneath, but didn't really work at all. Okay, so I was kind of running out of ideas, and this thing was becoming a real problem. Even just walking a little bit away from the life pod would very quickly cause it to fall through the map. But then I finally had this eureka moment when looking at a boulder with floaters. See, these boulders never actually fell through the map, so I figured, what if I took some of the floaters and tried attaching them to the life pod? I attached the floaters and decided to do the distance test, and bingo, the life pod would no longer fall under the map. So with my newly acquired master plan in place, I was able to actually get to some more resource gathering, and I would need quite a bit. Now the life pod would still occasionally do a little bit of breakdancing because of the floaters that were now attached to it, but at least for the time being, it wasn't falling under the map, which was exactly what I needed. And a few pieces of titanium later, there I was with my knife. Awesome. Okay, I probably shouldn't have done that. Ah. Well, on a positive note, I figured out a way to get quite high. On a more negative note, I also figured out a way to come down very quickly. Alright, let's not do that again. Now, I just want to emphasize how difficult it is to explore this world with no water. Every single hole that you can fall into presents a potential end of the game for you because you might not be able to climb out of it without any water or without materials to build, and in some of these crevices you can't even build at all, so you have to be really careful where you go, and my strategy became to only ever go to a place if I could walk in there without jumping, because jumping also happens to be quite finicky. Now on the plus side at least, the crash fish would not activate for some reason, so I was able to just walk up to them, detonate them with my knife, with no worries, so hey, that's at least one headache out of the way. In the heat of the moment, I decided to actually build a repair tool instead, so I would be able to repair my life pod and at least have it nice and lit up. And there we go, no water in the world, and I've already managed to fix up my life pod only like half an hour of gameplay later. Now at this point night had fallen, and I realized that, man, this would be a lot better with a flashlight, so in the back of my mind I kind of put the flashlight onto the list of things I should relatively quickly build. And so I promptly did. A few pieces of quartz later, there it was. Now equipped with the scanner and the flashlight, I was actually feeling pretty good about this whole setup. I started gathering stuff to be able to build the habitat builder, which I kind of considered the last of the necessary tools I would need just to kind of go about basic survival. It actually turned out to be relatively easy, and after gathering materials for a bit, there I was, with my habitat builder, ready to take on the world. Now at this point I also decided to do a little bit of just walking around and scanning. I figured there would be quite a few key things I would need in order to survive in this world, so I decided to just kind of go around and see what I can find. I also took a bunch of stuff that I wouldn't necessarily need, but I figured might as well scan it if I'm there. Yoink, that's a sea glide for me. At this point I also figured out it might be a good idea to make my way to other biomes in order to start gathering some additional resources and to start scanning some more stuff. So I very cautiously waddled down into the grassy plateaus and was actually able to get a bunch of stuff for the sea moth and also for the bioreactor, which proved to be super useful. Now, I do want to say that it's almost as if Subnautica's levels were not designed with player walking around everything in mind, because boy is it difficult to navigate around the grassy plateaus with grass that is all the way up to your freaking head. Oh, look at that, I even got to scanner room, isn't that nice? But then, the disaster struck. I look over, and my HUD tells me that the sea moth is once again underneath the map. I don't know what happened here, I'm not sure why, maybe just because I walked too far away, but basically, even my floater setup was not enough to permanently prevent it from going underneath the map. So that was a big problem, because I still had no other fabricator. So right into reloading I went, and I quickly realized that if I was going to be able to do anything, the first order of business had to be to build a piece of base with a fabricator so that I would no longer be dependent on my life pod at all. So that quickly became the next immediate task. Right after I caught up on everything that I lost in those 10 minutes of gameplay. I was getting slightly better at navigating, using a lot of jumping and momentum to actually get to places, which is definitely not the intended way to play the game, but it created a very interesting gameplay loop. Almost felt like something out of Tomb Raider maybe. You can definitely see that I was very happy with finding these materials. A bit of titanium, a bit of gold, and a bit of table coral, and there I was with a fabricator. Also, don't pay attention to the other fabricators in my menu. I believe they're a remnant from a different mod, but we won't be using any of that. I also quickly realized I would need to actually power the base, so the next order of business would be to build at least one solar panel, and probably put it onto a platform or something so that I can, in future, build a few more. And boom, there we were. Now I had a base, which had a fabricator inside, and it was all powered up, so technically at this point I could go anywhere, and even if my life pod fell through the floor, I would no longer have to worry. Awesome. So with that, I headed back out onto the mission to scan as many things as I could. A beacon? Sure, I'll take that. I quickly figured that a big thing that might be important at this stage of the game is the mobile vehicle bay, and even though I wouldn't be building the sea moth, building something like the prawn suit could be very handy. So I quickly looked up that you can find these in kelp forests and grassy plateaus. And so I simply headed to my nearest kelp forest and realized that unfortunately these things are almost entirely made out of sheer cliffs, so falling down there would be pretty much a game over for me. So I had to get creative or find a different place. A trash can? Sure, why not? And then my eyes finally fell upon something very exciting. I saw a wreck in the distance, and I knew that I had to try exploring it. Oh, and yeah, I even got some laser cutter pieces along the way, which is definitely something I will need later anyway, so I just picked them up along the way. I do want to emphasize that finding anything in this grass was so difficult that I would often only find blueprints when I would literally step on them, like this piece of scanner room here, that might very quickly become a problem later, but let's not think about it too much yet. Okay, so now we got into the question of how on earth am I going to get into this wreck? I tried using the old let's just climb it strategy, and boy, I can tell you that Riley can certainly jump pretty well. I was able to scale quite a bit of the wreck on the side, but unfortunately there was actually no entrance from this direction, so I had to abandon that plan pretty quickly. Well, but would you look at that, there's literally an entrance right here. It would be super annoying if at this point I realized that hello? Ah. So, newsflash, Riley actually cannot enter vents unless he's swimming, because if his model is upright, it is too large to fit inside. That's just bloody brilliant. I figured that the Cyclops would be the easiest way for me to go around, and it also negated fall damage, so it'd be super important, but these pieces can be really difficult to find, so it genuinely took me like a good half an hour of just walking around this place to even find those 3 necessary. But finally, 1, 2, and 3, I was able to get them, and then we were in business. Another 20 minutes of walking later, I was actually able to be like, hey, is that my habitat over there? And I successfully made it with a ton of resources on top of everything. So now it was on to the final grind, and then I would be able to build the mobile vehicle bay. And as you can imagine, everything went pretty simple, except for the creep vine cluster. See, what has turned out is that I've pretty much exhausted most of this plant which was within reach, so even my jumping strategy was no longer applicable. Okay, this is gonna be a problem. After trying a whole bunch of different stuff, I actually came up with the idea of maybe building lockers in such a way that I would be able to climb towards one of the plants. I'm not gonna lie, I had to try this over like 4 different times, because every time I would end up either too high or too low to actually reach the plant. At one point even being so infuriatingly close I was almost yelling at my screen. But alas, finally, after about another 20 minutes, I was actually able to get the creep vine clusters and head back to my base. A few moments of crafting later, and there I was finally holding my precious baby. Now in the back of my mind, there was this one ticking voice which kept saying that I'm gonna run into an issue, but I was kind of ignoring it. Oh boy, okay, we're running into that issue. So, the next thing is, we need to be able to deploy the mobile vehicle bay, and this is not just to build a prawn suit, this is actually also to build the Cyclops, in order for you to even be able to leave the planet in the end and build the Neptune rocket. This is important stuff, but there genuinely isn't a way to deploy this thing unless you are in water. I went into creative and tried everything. Maybe building a moon pool, maybe dropping it and reloading the game, maybe building literally anywhere around the map. Maybe building in the void. Absolutely nothing would work. No matter how hard I tried, not even spawning it would help me at all. And then, well, then I found the way. But anyways, that takes us to the end of this video, so you guys will have to wait for part 2 to see how I actually managed to get the mobile vehicle bay to at least sort of work. In the meanwhile, I really hope you enjoyed, and if you did, maybe consider leaving a like, commenting, or subscribing. All those would be very much appreciated. And make sure to stay tuned for part 2. I really hope that I will see all of you there. Now with that, I'm gonna wish you all a beautiful rest of the day, and I'll see you in whatever next video I make. Bye bye.